You think you know about the Massacre of Glencoe? I've been making a series of videos about the people involved committing this crime of murder under trust, starting from the most senior person and working my way down. This is my 5th video, and this is the first one about somebody called Campbell. Does that surprise you? Then keep watching. If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen. And if you enjoy the video, give a thumbs up and share with others like you. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. The Massacre of Glencoe wasn't the biggest massacre in Scottish history. It wasn't the bloodiest. It wasn't the most cruel. But it must be the most talked about. In this video, I'm going to look at the Campbell whose involvement cast a shadow over an entire clan for centuries. And from what I hear from transatlantic viewers, leads to them being shunned at clan gatherings. So who was Robert Campbell of Glenlyon? What was his role in the massacre? What happened to him when the killing was over? And how should that affect us today? Robert Campbell of Glenlyon was the captain of the company who murdered MacDonalds in their beds out there on the 13th of February 1692. He did it because on the way back from the Battle of Killiecrankie, the MacDonalds of Glencoe passed through Glenlyon and stole everything they could find. The orders that Campbell of Glenlyon had in his hands, that had passed from King William himself down through 5 other hands of higher ranking men before it got to him, that was nothing to do with it. Glenlyon just wanted revenge. So who was he? Robert Campbell. If I gave you a story up to Glencoe, it'd break your heart. Soft-skinned, rosy-cheeked Perthshire Highlander with an addiction to drink and cards that took him from minor landed gentry to landless destitute. Along the way, he'd mortgaged and remortgaged land, sold off timber and resources from the glen, been bailed out by seniors in the clan and tenants alike. He'd been held under court orders, he'd had cousins stage interventions. And after those Lochaber raiders took everything movable that he had left, Glenlyon sold what was left of his fixed property to pay for debt. At the age of 60, with few options and no assets, he took a commission in the Argyll regiment on 8 shillings a day. This wasn't how his life was supposed to go. Glenlyon was in the last 2 companies raised for this regiment, the 2 companies who would be used for the atrocities at Glencoe. The oldest officer in the regiment, one of the last officers recruited for those companies, and the only officer in those companies named Campbell. Do you like conspiracy theories? Everything we know suggests that whilst people further up the chain knew exactly what was to unfold in Glencoe, when Robert Campbell of Glenlyon and his company arrived to be billeted on the MacDonalds, they had no idea of the gruesome task that they would be given later. Major Duncanson, above them, was in the plan, and on the eve of the massacre, orders were sent to him from the Deputy Governor of Fort William to tell Duncanson to fall upon the MacDonalds at 7 a.m. To quote, 7 of the clock. 7. When Duncanson passed those orders on to Campbell of Glenlyon, let me read what his order said. For His Majesty's service to Captain Robert Campbell of Glenlyon. Sir, you are hereby ordered to fall upon the rebels, the MacDonalds of Glencoe, and to put all to the sword under severity. You are to have a special care that the old fox and his sons do upon no account escape your hands. You are to secure all the avenues that no man escape. This you are to put into execution at 5 of the clock precisely. 5 o'clock? Not 7. What? Let's read on. And by that time, or very shortly after it, I'll strive to be at you with a stronger party. If I do not come to you at 5, you're not to tarry for me, but to fall on. How convenient. But check out the threat implied in the last part of the order. This is by the king's special command for the good and safety of the country. These miscreants be cut off root and branch. See that this be put in execution without feud or favour, else you may expect to be dealt with as one not true to the king nor government, nor a man fit to carry commission in the king's service, expecting that you will not fail in the fulfilling hereof as you love yourself. I subscribe these with my hand at Ballachulish, February the 12th, 1692. Robert Duncanson. Oof, that got a bit sinister. If you don't do this, you'll be treated as a traitor. At the very least, you'll lose your commission in the regiment. You, the aged, destitute, who have nothing left and nowhere to go, expecting you will not fail in the fulfilling hereof as you love yourself. If you got that order this evening and you had to carry it out tomorrow morning at 5, you've got some big decisions with some pretty big consequences either way. Do you think it was an accident that Robert Campbell of Glenlyon was chosen for this task? To carry out what was later called Major Duncanson's Christian order. That feels dirty on the tongue. You'll find that in the Oxford Dictionary of 1984 doublespeak under, "Are you taking the piss?" Let me be clear. I'm not here to condone Campbell of Glenlyon or the actions that he took. We know what he chose to do. I'm just putting the decision that he made into some context. So what happened to him after? Just before I tell you that, let me remind you that I'll be coming to Glencoe with a group of up to 25 people as part of my autumn 11-day tour of Scotland. Now, I'm filming this video in January, but it's not scheduled to go up until spring. So don't hang about, as places will go quickly. It might even be gone. We're not just coming to Glencoe, of course. I'll take you to the Isle of Mull, Iona, Inverness, St Andrews and Edinburgh. I'll show you Loch Lomond and Loch Ness. I'll put on a comedy show and we'll end with a ceilidh. Now, more than half the seats are gone, but if you'd like to be one of the exclusive group to come on this wonderful trip, including full board, entry fees, and me as your guide, then either click the link top right or one in the description below, or email alexis@scotlandhistorytours.co.uk. The Glencoe murders were carried out in mid-February. By the end of March, Glenlyon was in Edinburgh with the regiment billeted in Leith. If the stories are true, then he became a bit of a curiosity in the coffee shops of the town, full of bluster when folks stared at him, claiming he'd do all again for king and country without a second thought. But in more reflective moments, he'd tell friends that he didn't like the business. But what could he do? What punishment would he have faced? He'd show people Major Duncanson's Christian order. He even left it with somebody long enough to have it copied. Jacobites circulated it around the town and further afield, and that is how the news reached the Paris Gazette and became more widely known. If it wasn't for this indiscreet self-justification, the events at Glencoe would probably never have been more than another overlooked 17th century military atrocity. I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking about it today. There probably would never have been a Scottish parliamentary inquiry. By the time that inquiry happened, Glenlyon and the Argylls had moved on. By late June, they were in Brentford, where a journalist of the day interviewed the soldiers of the regiment. Many were ashamed of what they'd done. They said, if you wanted to see how they felt inside, just look at Robert Campbell on the outside. McKeon hangs about Glenlyon night and day, they said. An old man who'd aged even quicker in the last 4 months. The guilt etched in every line of his face was the guilt they all felt. The Argylls had been shipped off to Flanders long before the parliamentary inquiry handed down its judgment, implicating Glenlyon and each of the men above him who'd passed down the order, apart from the king. Robert Campbell of Glenlyon never returned from Flanders. He died in Bruges on the 2nd of August 1696, a debt-ridden pauper buried in an unknown grave, far away from the beauty of Glenlyon. Don't get me wrong, I'm not asking you to feel sorry for him. He did some bad shit. I'm just saying that the context in which he did it was an order that threatened he'd be ruined and die bankrupt, debt-ridden and disgraced. When he died, bankrupt, debt-ridden and disgraced, did he look back on the events of this Glen? I wonder if he thought about the choice he'd made. His children and everyone of that name have lived with the consequences in popular mythology for 300 years. Although maybe not as much close to the time. In the 1715 Jacobite Rising, Robert Campbell's heir came out with 500 men to support the Jacobite cause. At the key battle of Sheriff Muir, children of Ian MacDonald of Glencoe and children of Campbell of Glenlyon marched together, stood together and charged together, shoulder to shoulder. If the children of the MacDonalds of Glencoe and the children of Campbell of Glenlyon stood side by side without grudge 23 years after Glencoe, why are people at some Highland gathering hundreds of years later an ocean away ostracising people about it today? Is there a lesson for us in Robert Campbell of Glenlyon? Was the decision that he made based on revenge for the other side, fear of his own side, the need for redemption, belief in a cause? We make 1,000 decisions every day. Some weighty, some insignificant. Some freely and others under duress. Some without consequence of conscience. Others a burden for a lifetime. Longer. 300 years and counting. Did we truly make any choices freely? If you chose differently, will it change anything? Nothing? You see, were it not for Glenlyon, there was a second captain in that company who wasn't called Campbell, who was far more comfortable with the job to be done in Glencoe. His story is quite incredible. You can hear it by watching the video coming up on screen now. Support the channel by clicking top right to become a Patreon member or buy me a coffee in the description below. In the meantime, Fummey and Doch is going to be Lama Life. Sherry and Rasta.